There we go. All right, welcome everyone to Introduction to Google Sheets. We're going to be covering a lot of things today, and this presentation will probably be about an hour and a half to 2 hours, which is kind of long. I apologize for that, but we're going to cover a lot of information, and if we have a lot of questions, of course, it makes it go a little bit longer. I will say, as we go along, I will be clicking and doing things at a fairly quick pace, and if you are new to Google Sheets or to Google, it may get confusing. If you need to see a step over again, you can simply unmute your microphone and say, hey, Mr. J, could you show that again? And I'd be happy to go back and retrace my steps. But just know that you'll have the opportunity with the video to, back up 30 seconds and see something over and over until it starts to make sense for you. But we're so grateful to have all of you here. Again, we have various schools throughout the district, various departments, and each of you is going to be doing something a little bit different in Google Sheets. But today, we're hopeful that you will learn some skills and gain some understanding and insight into Sheets that will help you in whatever it is you do for the district. So just know that the things that we're going to present today are things that have been asked by staff members over the years, going to these trainings saying, hey, well, in our department, we need to do X, Y, and Z. Can you show us how to do that? And so we're always trying to add more things to help out everyone in the district. And at the end of the day, as we all get better in this together, then it's going to be for the benefit of our students. And so that's what we're here trying to do. And thank you for being here today. All right, so again, at the end of our presentation, which will be roughly about an hour and a half, because there's a lot of information, we're going to open up to question and answers. And when we get to that point, you can ask anything you'd like, and we'll dig into it and try and solve it. And one of the things we'll be talking about is sharing files back and forth, because files and folders sharing back and forth is a little different than it was a few months ago. So we can kind of explore that together. I have an example set up that I can share with that. So, all right, here we go. What are we going to cover today? Well, we're going to cover a lot of things. Go ahead. Sometimes my Zoom makes my buttons not work, so I have to click twice instead of once. What are we going to do? We'll talk briefly just about what Google Drive and Docs and Sheets and all that is. In fact, I'll just do that right now. Everything Google resides in the cloud or on the internet, or stated more precisely, it's actually on giant computer server farms in big giant warehouses all over the world, and they're redundant, so if a meteorite takes out one location, there'll still be your information safe at another one. And everything you do on your browser, and today I'll be working from my Google Chrome browser, every click that I make, every keystroke, every choice and decision that I do, any data that I add to, in this case, a Google Sheet, is being recorded on those servers in the server farms up in the cloud. And so that's why when we add something to our Google Drive, or we add a file to our Google Sheets account, then we're actually uploading it. We're taking it off of our computer and we're sending it up into the cloud, uploading. And then you're probably familiar with downloading. We do lots of that stuff to our phones and downloading different things. You can actually download stuff from Google as well. But that's why it's called that, uploading, because it's up in the cloud. So we'll be going over some formatting and editing, just some basic things. Talk about something called paint format, column and row formatting. We'll get into that. Moving cells around, an important thing to be able to do. Copy and paste special. And depending on your background and experience working with either Excel or Google Sheets, paste special is an important feature, because sometimes you need to get rid of the formulas that are behind cells. And you'll see what that means when we get to that point, if that's new to you. Just basic navigation, how to get a new worksheet, that kind of stuff, we'll be going over it. So Google Sheets, the Google Sheets app, positive and negative. So here's a positive, a couple of them. Any formula that you can do in Excel, pretty much, from everything that I've read and people that I've talked to, whatever works in Excel as far as a formula works in Google Sheets. It's just set up that way. A negative is, whereas you can have a wizard or a little guide going along working in Microsoft Excel, you don't get the same kind of help in the Google Sheets app. And it has to do with the fact that because we're clicking, going back and forth over the internet to keep bandwidth down, I guess, for the amount of data going back, they just don't have all the features in Google Sheets that you could have in Excel. So what I share with people is that Google Sheets is about 10% of what Excel is. The good news is most people, even in Excel, and this is the case in the district and in many places, most people are only using 5 to 10% of the power of Excel anyway, which is why Google Sheets is something that works well and is being used widely in the district. So that's a positive. It's just kind of a simpler version of Excel, just kind of the basics are there. Negative is you can't do as many things, but the positive is you could be in Alaska visiting your old crazy Uncle Joe. It could be the dead of winter and 40 below outside and dark, and as long as you have a computer and the internet, you can access your Google Drive and your Google Apps, your Google Sheets in this case, and you can work from anywhere in the world on a browser, on your computer, any computer, as soon as you access your account. And so that's pretty slick. Anywhere you go, that makes it quite easy. You could do some things like that in Microsoft, but it's certainly more cumbersome and more difficult to do. But that's definitely a positive. So we're going to leave it at that. Let's see what else. We'll show you where you can find templates. Templates are simply like a template of a calendar, for example. If somebody has built a calendar in Google Sheets and they've got the basics there, got some colors and different formatting and all that, you can use that template and then make it your own and adjust it and customize it as you want. So we'll share that with you. Formula is positive and negative. We already mentioned that pretty much any formula that you can do in Excel, you can do in Google Sheets. The difficulty comes when you're not getting as much help as far as like a wizard or one of the many things that Excel will do to kind of help you along. You gotta have to know a little bit to get rolling, and hopefully by the end of today's class, you'll know enough that you'll feel confident that you can start to create your own formulas. All right, sorting and filtering, we'll try to get to that. Pivot tables. Not a lot of people are using pivot tables in the district. Most of them are using it in Excel. This is something that wasn't even available a few years ago, and then as Google does, they're always changing their apps and trying to improve them and add different things, so they've added pivot tables. Pivot tables are very complex. They're very powerful, the way that you can manipulate data. We're going to give an example of it at the end. If it's not something you're using already, chances are you won't be using it, but you will see an example of how it works and how you can access data in remarkable ways, and that's what a pivot table is, so we're going to have an example of that later. The biggest, most exciting part about all things Google Apps is the sharing ability, where you can share something that others can view, and you decide who's going to be able to see that. For example, like my videos that I send out, supposedly, as I mentioned before, if you select in the sharing share with all sandy.net Google domain people that have the link, they're all supposed to see it. But again, I've been struggling with this the last week or so, and it might have to do with how much stuff I have on my drive, I don't know. But people aren't having that access. They're having to request, and some of you that are here in our class today, I'm sure there's at least a few of you that have already had to do that, saying, well, okay, well, I've got a request from Mr. J to be able to see this, and then I have to add you to it. But just know that in the perfect world that you're able to share with whomever you want. They can either be a viewer, it could be a viewer and a commenter, adding comments to whatever document or spreadsheet that you have without actually changing it, or you can make someone an editor. And we actually won't be demonstrating this part, but just know that if you had a worksheet in front of you that your department or your school site is using to add student names to or take things out of there, you can divide up the responsibilities of that, and at the same time, you could actually all 3 or 5 of you be working on the spreadsheet at the same time. Just know that those are the abilities. Some things work better than others, but the idea that someone can work on their part on Saturday and another person works on a Sunday morning, another person works on a Tuesday, whatever, you all have access to it. So that's one of the biggest and best features of all things Google Apps, is that it can be shared. And again, from anywhere in the world, as long as you have a computer with a browser on it, you can access your files. So last but not least, we have to include this in this class. So we talked about formulas, the positives and negatives. When I teach my Intro to Excel and also the Advanced Excel classes, I always cover flash fill. This is machine learning, something that came about in the Office 2013 version. It is incredible. It actually eliminates the need for most formulas, for functions and formulas. And I can't say enough about it. So at the very end, for about 10 minutes, we're going to talk about flash fill. And you're probably thinking, well, Mr. J, this is a Google Sheets class, so why are you going to be talking about this? Well, if you're struggling in Google Sheets and you're trying to manipulate data and you can't figure out the formula because there's not a lot of help in Google Sheets, maybe you could jump in Excel, you could accomplish the exact same thing, and then you can just copy out of Excel and then paste it into your Google Sheet, and there it is. And all the while, never touching a formula or a function, because flash fill is just that awesome. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, and trying to get through all of those things. And so at this point, we're just going to move forward. So again, if there's something that you didn't quite understand and you want a clarification as I'm going along with these features, please unmute yourself and say, hey, Mr. J, could you show me that again, or tell me why that happened or this happened? And we'll stop and do that. And just know that at the end, we'll open up for an hour or two or three, whatever it takes, to answer all of your questions that you have about the Google Apps. So there we go. Let's get out of this. And the next thing that I want to share with you is, let's see, our folders. Let's find this real quick. So I sent you a number of files today, and if you were in our Google class this morning, Google Drive Basics, you already have some of these things, but I have a number of online handbooks, and I just wanted to take a moment. If this is your first time seeing this, it's important that you understand what it is. So these are online handbooks. Just like in our Microsoft classes, I create plus or minus 100-page handbooks that describe all of the steps and have screenshots and tutorials of various things that you do in like Excel, for example, that people in the district have requested, and all those steps are in there, and you have that handbook in your hand. You come to, back before COVID, you'd come to the lab and 15 of you would be in there, and you'd all get your little handbooks, and then we just kind of go through these different exercises, and then you have your handbook later to make a reference to. And now we're doing the Zoom, in the Microsoft classes, you're getting that electronically in the PDF. Well, people had asked for years ago, well, how come you're not making a handbook in Google? Well, the simple answer is Google is ever changing. Because it resides in the cloud and not on your computer, Google tomorrow could change the entire look of Drive, for example, or how the Google Sheets app looks, or how it interacts, or how it shares. Different things are changing all the time. So what I have done is simply this, created these PDFs, where I went to the Google support sites, and right now I just did a PDF here. It says Google Sheets Online Handbook. I added all this and put this nice little Google Sheets icon there. And then what I did was went and found the sections in the Google support websites where they have their tutorials and instructions on how to do things. And they had a section called Get Started with Google Sheets, and another one that said Edit and Format a Spreadsheet. Another one says formulas and functions and working with data and all that. And then as you can see, there's all these links down below here. We're going to go back to this first one, how to use Google Sheets. That sounds pretty basic. So I'm going to click on that, and it's going to open up on my browser here. And you can see up here, it says support.google.com. This is not something that I have created. All I have done is simply made a PDF with those links, with the same categories that Google uses. The advantage of this is when something changes on how to create a spreadsheet, or something's different about editing and formatting, as Google modifies their program, their in this case, their Sheets app, then they're going to also be changing and updating all of their instructions so that all of this is current. And so the advantage of the online handbook is these links, I've had this for a couple of years, and all of the links seem to keep working. If you ever find a link that doesn't, let me know and I'll go figure out where it got lost. But all of these things are being changed and updated all the time. And my links so far are still going to those pages and they're working. So there's just so many things you can learn. And just quickly point out, comes by default, it comes straight to computer. But if you have an Android, those instructions are different. If you have an iPhone or an iPad, those instructions are different. And as you can see, Google is very good at providing lots of support to help people use their various apps. All right, so just one more thing. I'll just go down here since we talked about formulas and functions, that you don't get a lot of help as you're trying to do that in Google Sheets, but you have lots of help in other places. So for example, the Google Sheets function list, I'll just click on that, and it discusses what functions are. It tells what type they are, what category, and we'll see that in just a little bit. Something weird going on in my thing here. Oh, it's probably because I'm not. Let me just open that up all the way. Maybe that'll help. There we go. Get it out of our face. And it talks about the different aspects of what these various types of functions do, and we'll get into functions and what they are and how they relate to formulas in just a little bit. But here is a description of every single one that they have. And if you look over here on the right, my elevator bar, you can see I'm going to be scrolling for some time trying to get through them all because there are hundreds, if not thousands. And of course, we won't be using all of those. Some are dealing with engineering and all that. We'll get into that. If this is all new to you, that's okay. We're going to see that in action here in just a little bit. So again, that's something that's available to you on your online handbook, which I have provided. So there's several handbooks with all the different topics. The one extra thing that I have is the helpful links. Just going to open that real quick. And again, this is just a PDF that I've created, actually created it in Google Docs and then turned it in, downloaded it as a PDF, and have sent it to you and made it available. Different pieces of information on Google Drive, and also some YouTube tutorials that you can watch individuals sharing with you. Some of these tutorials are an hour long, 2 hours long, some are 5 minutes long. Then there's a section of Google Docs, Google Sheets, different bits of information available from both the Google support pages, but also on YouTube for all the different Google apps that are there. So people over the years have said, hey, Mr. J, we just learned about slides today. Where do I find out about forums? And so on. And then I just have created this so that someone can then access some of the things that I've already found. And of course, how did I find all these things? I'm not some crazy genius. Might be a little bit crazy, but it's all these things are available online. So if you're ever trying to figure something out, even in Sheets, you can go to Google and you can search, how do you share a file in Google Sheets? And you will get directed to that place, which I probably have a link to up here somewhere, on how to do that on the Google support pages. This is simply kind of a cheat sheet, if you will, to be able to access that stuff more quickly. All right, so today we're going to be using this file here. It's again the same file pretty much that I use in the Excel class, but we're going to be doing it in Sheets. And then at the end, I wasn't providing this in the previous classes, but people were requesting it because it actually has the flash fill exercises. So this is available to you. And when we do flash fill, you'll understand what this is, and then it's something there for you to be able to practice. All right. So those are all the files. That's why I sent them. There's one more little cheat sheet here. I'm not going to take the time to do it. It's just it's a little 3-page thing showing the different parts of Google Sheets. So there we go. So first things first, I'm going to shrink that down. And here I am in my Drive. And I'll go ahead and close that. So this is always a good place to start when you're working with Google Sheets and all that. So the first thing that I would like to do is just go take a look at what Google Sheets looks like. And before I actually do that, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to open this Microsoft Excel file that we're going to be using today in Google Sheets. I just want you to see what it looks like. So let's see, collapse the ribbon. No, there we go. All right, so again, this is Excel, and this is a file that we're going to be looking at shortly and working with in Google Sheets, but I wanted you to see what it looks like in Excel. And again, you might be very experienced in Excel, so this is all going to be redundant, but if you're new, this may be helpful to kind of see how the two compare and what they look like. So here we have just some information, some data, some numbers and letters on a first sheet, sheet 1. And then we have a section called last name, comma, space, first name, where we do an exercise of using a function and a formula to be able to change these individual columns into a single one, where it would say Gable, comma, space, Clark. And that's where we practice that. And then we have another example where we have the full name and we split it into 2. Then we have like just a version of, I'm going to try and shrink this down here. Little trick, hold down the control key and roll your mouse wheel, and you can usually make things zoom in and out. I can't actually get to my zoom bar down here because one of my 3, that's a little confusing. We're watching this video presentation via Zoom, the video presentation software, but down on the bottom of your taskbar, you also have a zoom thing that allows you to zoom in and out as far as your view. But since mine is blocked, I can hold my control key down and then roll my mouse wheel one direction and roll it the other, and it either enlarges or shrinks, so that's helpful. Then I have a pretend school here that we're going to be looking at. It has 473 students. There's a header at the top, so it looks like 474. Want to get back up to the top of that, so another trick, hold down the control key, and somewhere over on the right of your keyboard there's a home button, H-O-M-E, home. You click that and it takes you back up to the top. So we're going to be manipulating this data and practicing a couple different things that we can do here. We're not going to get into the charts today. But anyway, this is the Excel version here, and I just wanted you to see what that looks like. And then, of course, the way it's laid out is they have ribbons with all kinds of different features in groups, clipboard group, font group, all the different features on how to manipulate font and change that, alignment group, you know, left justified, right justified, center, all that. And they have these tabs up here. So we're on the Home tab ribbon, that's this. Here's the Insert tab, let's try that again, an Insert tab ribbon with all the different groups for inserting things. We'll just jump ahead, page layout, margins, orientation, all of that. And so here's the formula section, has all the different types of formulas right here and different things you can do with formulas, and we cover all that in our Excel classes. But that's how they do it. And so let's go take a look and see how that compares to Google Sheets. So I'm going to go ahead and shrink that down. So here we are, we're in our Drive, and if we want to look at a new Google Sheet or create a new one, and of course we can go over here to our new, take a look at those different options that are there. Go down here to Google Sheets and click on blank presentation. And then we get a blank presentation that opens up. All right, give me a second to take a drink. All right, so far we noticed that things pretty much look the same. Again, I'm zoomed in pretty far, or zoomed out, I guess is probably what it is. And I want to change this a little bit. So I'm just going to hold my control key down. I'm going to roll my mouse wheel one way, that shrinks it, that's too small. I'm going to get it just a little bit larger so it's a little easier to see. So the first thing we notice is our quick access toolbar in Excel is completely customizable, and we teach how to do that in our Excel class. But here in the Google Sheets world, they have this great handy little quick access toolbar that's got, I don't know, 20, 30 different features that are right there. What Google thinks being the most common, most useful things to have. So that's great to have. But here's the deal. Every single feature that you see here exists up in these different tabs. But instead of ribbons, they have drop-down menus. And so those drop-down menus, in some cases, have sub-menus with lots of different options of what you can do. And so I will tell you this, if you're fairly new with Google Sheets and with any program you're ever trying to learn, spend some time to look around. This class is only an hour and a half, and it goes by so quick as we get into formulas and whatnot. We won't have time to deal with a lot of these, but you can just poke around and see what your options are. So apparently this spreadsheet, I can turn it back into an Excel file. That's pretty cool. Downloading it. Again, remember, we're in Google. up on the server farms in the cloud on the internet. And if we download something, in this case, turn this, whatever it is we're working on here, this worksheet, turn it into an Excel file. And then we can download it to our computer and put it on our desktop or somewhere else we want to. A few different options, turn it into a PDF just to show people something. There's a bunch of different options there. So if you see something that's grayed out, it's not available to you. In the case of version history, since we just started this, there isn't one. But after we've been doing this for a while, then you can certainly explore that. Rename, spreadsheet settings, print, some basic things there. And we go to edit, and some of our favorite things you can do, undo and redo, Control Z. We'll be using that a few times today. And you'll notice that right up just to the left of where I am, and if I move over there, this will disappear, but you'll see that the undo and redo is just to the left up here on the quick access toolbar. It is something, again, that we use a lot. It's one of the best ways to make something go back to whatever it was before because you've changed it and you don't like the way it looks. Cut, copy, paste, paste special, we talked about that. You take a peek at that for a second. Paste values only, you'll hear me use that term a lot today, values. Values are nothing more than a number or a letter, something like that. Whereas you can see in a cell some numbers or some letters. They could be names, they could be whatever kind of data it is. There could be a formula behind that. And so that's where we have to think about how do we want to paste? What is it we want to do? And which one would work the best for us? All right, here we go. So here in the edit drop-down menu, we have delete rows, delete values, delete cells, and shift up. And certainly as you start to use this, you'll be able to practice all those different things. This will come in handy. We'll be working on this later, where we can freeze the top row, and we'll demonstrate how that works. Grid lines, exactly what it sounds like. So if I click that, aha, everything went away. How do you get it back? You just go back to grid lines and click on it again. And as you can see, not only can we see the grid lines, but the check mark comes back. All right, so we can protect cells up there, formula bar. Always recommend that your formula bar is open. That's this part right here. And why do you want that open? Because if you're clicking on a cell, you want to know if there's a formula behind whatever you're seeing there. And we'll demonstrate that in a little bit. So again, just kind of going along, there's so many different things to look at. We want to change the size, we can do it there. So on and so forth. Inserting, what kind of stuff can we insert? Well, whatever row we're working on, we can put another one above it or put another row below it. Same with the columns, whatever column we're working on. We want to have a column to the left or to the right. So you kind of start to see all the different things that you can do, and it kind of makes sense how it's organized. Insert. Well, if you want to insert a chart into your spreadsheet, that's where you would do it. Image, drawing, form, different things, functions. We'll be getting into this, and if this is your first time seeing it, it's going to be a little confusing, but we're going to try and demystify it a little bit for you. If you want to put a link in there, a checkbox, or some other things, create a new sheet. That's kind of like what we're talking about down here. It's as simple as hitting that plus sign, and it adds another one. And just real quick, we'll go back to format. Some of the things you're familiar with. Anybody that's spent any time on a computer at all already knows what bold and italic and underline and font size, what that is, and probably know about aligning left, aligning right, just the way that you set up your data. And we'll get to use some of these today. Several of the things that you could do in Excel are available here in Sheets. But again, Sheets is about 10% of the power of what Excel is. So you will not expect to see everything there. So data, just real quick, looking at that. If you're trying to alphabetize a list, and we'll be doing that a little bit later. Filtering stuff where you can filter out certain things. Well, might be able to get to that. Here's where we'll find our pivot table. So again, there's many things that are in here. They're like named ranges. Somebody sent me an email a couple months ago and said, hey, our department is doing name ranges and they want us to know how to do that. I had never dealt with that before. So guess what I did? I went to Google and said, what are named ranges in Google Sheets? Or I could have said, how do name ranges work in Google Sheets? And guess what I found? Lots of video tutorials, step-by-steps, the Google support pages where they have information on that. And so again, with any of these things, if you want to learn how to do it, and there's many things to learn, then Googling it is always a great idea, because even if we had a 100-hour long class. We couldn't cover everything on all of these lists. All right, so there's your little brief introduction. I will just say that every cell that you see, and that's what these are called, has a name. And the name is always the column name, in this case B, followed by the row name, in this case 5. And I wish they would do what Excel does, and they have a little window up here, and when you click on this, it'll actually say B5, which is helpful. But it's important to know that because you cannot do formulas and functions without knowing the names of cells, or in some cases, the range of cells. So this is C5 through C11, and that becomes important. So there it is, your quick access toolbar. All your different tabs, instead of ribbons like in Excel, you have these drop-down menus, which in many cases have sub-menus, and allows you to do some different things. Here we go. You will see this a lot in any Google product. It says new. Why? Because that wasn't there a week or 3 or a month or 2 ago. It's something that's brand new. And so all the time you're going to be seeing little banners pop up and say, hey, guess what? This is a new feature. This is how it works. And when you see those banners, take the time to read it and just look at it and kind of make a little mental note, because things change all the time and it's good to keep up with those changes. And again, they're doing that to try and make it better. Even though there's times you're going to feel probably like I do, like, oh my gosh, stop changing stuff. It's making me dizzy. I can't remember how things are working because it's all a little bit different. But again, just like each version of Microsoft Office, in 2013, they came out with that flash fill. That was fabulous. But in 2016, they had some other features that were good. In 2019, I haven't even looked at that yet, but I assume there's going to be even better features that are in there. So it's always worth getting to know the new things that they do, because it's something that's going to make your life easier at some point, even though at first it can be a little painful trying to learn how to do that. All right, so there we go.
Could you do one thing? I'm sorry.
No problem.
I'm trying to bring up the same screen on my computer, on a different computer, and I must have missed that part. So
Thank you for stopping me. So are you able to access your drive?
Yes.
Okay, so all you have to do, there's a couple different ways to do it, but the simplest way is just to go here where it says new and click on it. Opens up this little menu here, and then this section here says Google Sheets. You hover over this little more button, and your first option there is blank spreadsheet. And I can do it again.
Okay,
I'm simply going to click on that, and there it is. And it's untitled until we title it, and that's as easy as clicking there and typing in a title. But that's how that works. So awesome. I'm going to thank you for asking that question. All right. In fact, I am going to get rid of these other files up here I was practicing with before, so I don't get myself confused. All right, so I'm just going to remove a couple things here. Yes, I'm going to put it in the trash. You can imagine trying to train people several times a week in Google things that I end up with so many files. It just makes my head spin trying to keep up with them all. All right, last but not least, this is so important. You got a link to our training calendar that we have. And up here at the top, talks about Google Drive Basics, Docs and Slides, which in January, I'm going to separate these out into 2 classes. Google Docs is used far more than Google Slides, and trying to cram them both into an hour and a half presentation is kind of hard. But for right now, for this quarter, this is the way we've been teaching it. We have a Google Sheets, Google Forms class, Intro to Word and Advanced Word, Intro to Excel and Advanced Excel, little descriptions on what it is we cover in the class, and then we have all the classes listed out. You've probably seen this already. That's probably how you got even into this class. But for those of you that maybe haven't, just know that you click on any one of these blue titles here, and it takes you to the place where you can actually sign up for the classes. So that's pretty slick. And then I'll just share with you, here we are in December. Here's today, here's our afternoon class. Next week, we've got Intro to Word, Drive Basics, Docs and Slides, and Advanced Word. And here's a courtesy that I offered to for each of our students that are returning. If you ever get to a class, like say this intro class or the advanced one has 100 students in it already, and it's full and you're not able to register for it, all you have to do is send me a quick email and say, hey, Mr. J, this is such and such. Here's my employee ID number. Can you add me to the Thursday, the 10th of December advanced Word class? And in about 4 clicks, I can put you in there and add you, even though it's already full. But please only do that if the class is already full. So if Drive Basics still has 50 spots, go ahead and just click on it, and you can, of course, add yourself, and that'll save us some time. So there's some of the classes that are coming up before winter break. And as you can see, we've been very busy. We haven't even filled in the January, February, and March. I will, by the end of this week, I will have at least by this weekend, I'll have all of January in there, and then hopefully very soon I'll have January, February, and March. And then again, you can just, if you keep this link somewhere, you can even make a shortcut of this link on your desktop. Then you can click on it just to see what the new classes are, and then if you want to take that particular class in January, just like I said, click on it, sign up for it, and there you go. And again, if you're late to the party, as it were, and you click on it and it says there's already 100 people, just send me a quick email stating your employee ID and which class it is, and I can add you to that class. It's not a problem. You know, we're grateful to have you learning with us. All right, any questions about any of this stuff before we move on? And I see up here, here's another Google thing. We have different individuals you probably recognize. We have a Kansas City Chiefs fan. So in the email that I sent you earlier, and I end up sending links to this calendar and a lot of different emails just to kind of get the word out. By the way, share this with your colleagues, the other people that you work with at your site or in your department, so that they can have access to this and get as many people trained as possible. So I will just say this, what a blessing, or I should say a silver lining to this whole pandemic thing. We were fighting for lab space at the IMC with about 15 computers in a single lab. We would have access to that lab, us individual trainers, 2, maybe 4 times a week if we were lucky, and only for 3 hours at a shot. And so you can imagine in a month, we'd be lucky to teach 100 or more students. Right now with Zoom, we are teaching 100 plus per class and reaching thousands of our staff members, of which we have thousands of classified staff out there, and teachers, many more, that could benefit from learning all this. So I'm grateful that we're able to provide that for you. So please share that calendar around and come back to it in the next week or two and see more classes filled in there, and you can sign up for those. All right, let's get back to where we were. So first things first, we had an interesting experience this morning where I was in Drive and I was sharing about the setting where you can click the convert button here, and then when you bring in files like an Excel file, it automatically turns it in your Drive. It turns it into, in this case, from Excel to Google Sheets. Well, it started behaving differently today than it has in the past. And again, I don't know if it has to do with the fact that I have so much crammed into my Drive because of all the videos that things aren't working right, or if Google has changed the way that they do things and how this particular feature works, or our, let me go back up here, our administrator for the district can also add or change anything at any time. And so you won't see up here, you shouldn't see up here, I don't believe, your Gmail, because our district has decided, the district administrator, that the Sandy.net Google domain is not going to offer Gmail, Google Mail, because we're all using the Microsoft product, and that's just the decision that they've made. So just know, though, if you have something up here and say you're working on forms all the time, if you want, you can just drag it and put it up there at the top if that's important to you, or you can put it back or move it around. And there's just a whole bunch of different Google apps that you can do that with. But back to this, the settings thing. In settings, in the general section, second one down, if you click this box, and I'm not going to click it because I don't like to do it this way, supposedly when you bring in an Excel file or a Word file or a PowerPoint file, it will, if this is checked, it will automatically turn it into, in the case of PowerPoint, it'll turn into a Google slide. In the case of Excel, into Google Sheets. In the case of Word, it would turn it into a Google Doc automatically. But again, it's been behaving differently, but that's okay because I don't like using this anyway, so I'm not going to demonstrate that today. What I am going to do is demonstrate the way that I usually like to do it, and so let's go with that. So I'm just going to make a folder here for today, and I'm just going to call it today's, and I have a few of these. I'm going to put Sheets class. All right, I'm going to create it, and I have it here. There it is. I'm going to right click on it, and just so it stands out, I'm going to make it red, and that's how you do that. And so if I click on it, we'll see we went from My Drive, and now we're in today's Sheets class, and we don't have anything that's in here. And I want to upload some stuff. So a second thing that happened today, and this is what made me think that it might be related to memory, but just bear with me here, and I apologize if this is confusing, but here's my browser. This has nothing to do with Google. This is to do with my PC, in this case my laptop, and what's on my hard drive. And in my file, or my folder rather, the 2020 Google Sheets stuff, I've got my Sheets version, which we're going to be using here in just a second. And you see it says 63 kilobytes. That's all it is. It's nothing. I tried to, in experimentation mode, just playing with this earlier by bringing files in, trying to figure out what happened in my earlier class today. I tried to do this one, and as you can see, it's only 90 kilobytes. That's nothing. That's what is that? That's like less than 10% of a megabyte, right? And that's all it is. But it was saying that it could not put it into Google Sheets because the file was too large. But it did allow this one, which is also tiny. So hopefully this is going to work. So just wanted to point that out to you. We've just been having some problems. So what I've done is in my drive, and you can do this too if you'd like, I just put today's Sheets class. You can put whatever you want or not do one at all. But when I click in there, because I just created it, there's nothing in there, but I want to bring some files in. So I can right click on it, and I can upload some of those files. In this case, we're talking about the files that I emailed to you yesterday, I guess. Or you can just go up here and you can say new and do the same thing, upload file. But again, I'm going to do that. But again, we are, and here's the browser for my laptop. So we're in my drive, in today's Sheet class folder, and we're going to go try and find something. All right, so I happen to know that I put it there. It's in my Google Sheets folder, and there it is. Again, 63 kilobytes. Let's cross our fingers and hope this works. So again, I don't have that box up here in the settings selected, so it should leave it as an Excel file. Let's go ahead. Down here, we see that it's uploading. And it's such a tiny file. Boom, there it is. And we know that it's Excel because it's got the little Excel icon that's right there. So that's helpful. It's always a good idea to have a place that you're bringing it so you can find it, because sometimes it'll disappear on you, and there's 100 different reasons why. Might have something to do with the way that you have this set up. It might be alphabetical order or something, and your file you just have is now at the end, so you got to search through 500 different files to find it. So this makes it a little bit easier. So here it is. It's the one that we showed you, that we opened up, that had the fake school, 473 students and all of that. And if this works right, and I'm going to do this first just because I want to share this with you. If I right click on it, of all the different options that I have here, the one at the top is preview. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. And watch when I do. It's not going to go anywhere. We're still going to be here. We're just in a preview mode. So I'm going to click on it. So again, we're still in our drive. We're previewing this in the Excel mode. So this is an Excel file. We can't click and change any data. But if we remember this part where it said last name, comma, space, first name, and then that other one where it said full names, where I told you we were going to come up with a formula to be able to manipulate that data, and then a short version of a school, just like so there wasn't a lot of data. And of course, we had the big full one that had 473 students. There it is. I can preview this. I can scroll around. I can do all that. I just can't change anything because it's just a preview. So I'm going to go back out of that. So prior to today, if you have an Excel file inside your drive and you double click on it, it goes straight to the preview mode that I just showed you. But earlier today when I tried that, it went to a middle version. So let's just see what it does. Yep, it's going back to the middle version. That's okay. Middle version, what am I talking about? Well, for some reason, someone decided that, why don't we have a Google Sheet that also is allowed to be an Excel file? Huh? Well, this is the middle version, and it is a Google Sheet, but it has an Excel file extension. And so you can go in here and you can add data and formulas and do different things. And all I'm going to tell you is that this particular version, from what I've read in chat rooms and look at the Google support pages, is that people say that weird things happen in that world. You can have an entire day's worth of work disappear and you cannot find it. Not even going back to the version history. Where do we see that? Come on, work with me. Version history. See that? And you go back there and whatever you did that previous day doesn't exist. That to me is absolutely frightening. So I would never work in both worlds like that. Either you have an Excel file you're working with or you have a Google Sheets one. So again, let's go back. So in this one right here, what it would look like, or what it was looking like before, when I clicked on that, it would simply take me to this. And as you can see up here at the top, it says, hey, open with a Google Sheet. And when you do that, and I can actually do that right now, I'll click on it and it will open up and it'll give you this this middle one where it's the half Google and half Microsoft. All right, enough said about that. So how do we get it to 100% Google? In this case, Google Sheets app. You simply click on File, and you go down, and you save as a Google Sheet. And when I do that, you'll notice up at the top that another tab is then going to come around. Here we go. So let's open up another one. So again, you can, because it's a sandy.net Google domain, you can store unlimited files in your San Diego Unified Google account. Again, I don't know if there's problems when you start to have so much in there, but I've been experiencing strange glitches this last week and they just continue to keep happening. So I don't know if that's true. We can have everything, but anyhow, so we start off by a preview of it where we can't change it, and it's an Excel file 100%, but it allows us to view it in our Google Drive. And then if we click on Open with Google Sheets, it makes it into the middle form, I'll call it, where it's half Google, half Microsoft. And then if we go to File, and we go down and we say Save as Google Sheets, then it pops up in another tab, and now we're 100% Google Sheets, and you'll see there's no extension there. So I can leave the middle one. I don't have to worry about that. Okay, so let's jump into this and see what we can do. So by the way, remember when that middle section I was adding data, I just kind of rolled my fingers across my keyboard. There it is. So now I can go back if I want, and I can just backspace and delete all that. All right, so let's take a look at what we have here. All right, so just some basic formatting things. And again, our quick access toolbar here, we have all of these features. And if you're not sure what something does, hover over it. Not only does it tell you what it is, in this case, the undo button, it gives you, in this case, the keyboard shortcut, which is very helpful. Control Z and Control Y. You can probably guess what that is. Control P is the print. And here's the paint format, which is called Format Painter in Microsoft. Of course, they had to change it a little bit so they could have an excuse to be able to use it. And that's what they did. So you can just hover over all of these things to kind of get an idea of what they are. This, of course, is our font, and we have all these different fonts we can explore. We have our font sizes here, and here is a perfect demonstration of the limitations, I guess, of Sheets. So if I were to click on tomatoes here, and you can see there's no formula because it's just the letter values. It happens to spell out a tomato, which I think that's a fruit. Is that what I heard? I thought it was a vegetable. And there it is. And so if we want to change the font in that, we can go up here and we could if we're in Excel, we can hover over any of these and we get to see a preview. We don't have that option. So if I want to change it and see what it is, I just have to commit to it and click on it. Of course, if I don't like that change, I could quickly go back and do undo. But since I did one at Lobster, I'll click redo. All right, so then we can change the font size. So we go over here and again, if we were in Excel, very powerful, kind of like a Lamborghini versus a Volkswagen, and we could see all the different sizes. So we just have to kind of guess and say, okay, that one's all right, we'll go with that. And then if we want, we can make it bold, but I want you to notice something. Some of these features here, when I click on it and I make this bold, you will see a little box around this. Now it's like a little blue-gray box that's around there. And it looked kind of bold before, but that was just the font. Now it's even more bold. And of course, if I make it italic like that, then it's going to do some changes there a little bit. Some fonts are already italicized, so you can't really see. But my point is, you will see little boxes around the ones that you're using. So here's our text color. So let's go ahead and make that some red. All right. In this case, it doesn't give you a box, but it shows you what the color is in that particular cell. So here's if you want to highlight the cell or fill in, around it, kind of like a highlight. Different things that are here, and we'll get to some of these. But here's the alignment if you want to be a line left, a line right, or in the middle. Different things you can experiment with. And some of these other ones we'll get to a little bit later as we get into it. But here we go. So right now, as far as formatting goes, we have this word tomatoes here in cell B4. And we have done how many different things to it? Well, let's count them. 1, 2, 3. Change the font size and the font, so that makes 5. So we can go to any other cell here and copy those 5 steps again and do the exact same thing. Or we can go over here and click on that and go to our paint format. And then just simply click on the cell that we want to transfer that information to. Unfortunately, unlike Microsoft Office, where you can double click on this feature and then click here, click there, click here, click there, and change, that the formatting, to match whatever it was you were starting on to all the other ones. You can't really do that, but you can do this. I can come down here and then drag down, and then when I let go, all of them then will have that formatting. And if you want to get real crazy, you can go up here between A and 1, click up there, let's see if this works. Aha! So since I selected everything and I had one shot to format it, to copy that, then it looks like this. So this is when the undo button comes in handy, because certainly we don't want to do that. And I don't even want the one before that. All right, so there's a couple different features, and if this is all brand new to you, there you have some experience of being able to move things around. Let's talk about some other ideas real quick. So here we have a number 5 in this particular cell here, and underneath it we have a 10, and other numbers. If I want to, I can put my mouse cursor at the edge of the blue lines, and I can drag that and put it anywhere I want to. All right, and I can do that as many times as I want. And a note for what's coming up here in shortly. If there was a formula in here, and I know there's not, because the formula bar is simply just showing the value of 5. If there's a formula in here, the formula would follow also. And we'll see that become important in just a minute. I'm going to undo those last 2 moves and put it back. So this little box here on the bottom right, well, I call it the black magic plus sign, because there's some cool things you can do. When we have formulas involved, we'll show you in a minute how you can copy that formula very quickly. But it's basically a copy tool. And so if I grab that little plus sign there and I hover over to get the black magic plus sign, and I left click and I hold it, whatever cells I drag over, whatever was in those cells, in this case a couple of 10s, is going to be erased, if you will, or overwritten by 5s. And that's what they are. And sure enough, each cell, you can see up on the formula bar, has the number 5 in it. And I'm going to just undo that move. If I want to, I can drag it as far as I want, and as many cells as I want to, it's going to copy those 5s. That's pretty cool. So same thing with words. If you want to do it this way, you can have a whole bunch of cheesecakes. You can also do it horizontally if you want, and it will copy it out. So that's, I call it the black magic plus sign. You'll see a little bit later how powerful it is when you're dealing with formulas. There's a lot of things you can do. So I'm going to undo those last couple like that. Now, real quick, so we're looking up here in column F, and we have some numbers that are kind of scrunched in there. So you may or may not know this, but you can move things around. In other words, the widths of columns in this case. You can do the same thing if you get right between the different rows. You can expand those and whatever by just clicking and dragging. But something I wanted to point out. You can click it and drag it, and you might have to do that a couple times to see where it all is. You're not sure exactly how much room you need to see everything. So let me just go back a couple. All right, there's another thing you can do. When you get your cursor right between columns F and G, and you get the left right arrow, and you hold your mouse still, and you simply double left click. And it won't work if you wiggle your mouse around because it thinks you're trying to do something else. But if you hold it steady and you double click, it will automatically expand it to exactly the width necessary to fit whatever data is in that cell. So in the case of graham crackers, it goes all the way over here. And no, graham crackers is not in J, this case 6. It's just hanging over there because there's no data next to it. So it's giving us like a preview, if you will, of what's there. So if I want to be able to fit column H to accommodate all that, go right between it, double click. And as you can see, it's spread out column H to accommodate whatever the longest, or in this case, widest data set was inside column H. So that's pretty cool. Kind of an important thing. And we're going to show you how to kick it up a notch when you can do an entire sheet simultaneously when we get to another section. But for right now, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at these files over here, and we're going to start talking about formulas. All right. So with formulas, every formula, whether it's Excel or Sheets, always starts with an equal sign. So let's say we want to add up. In this case, we have E10 through E15. If this would be a range of cells, E10 through E15. If we want to add that up, we can create a formula down here where we will see what all of those different cells in the range add up to. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. We'll just put it here for fun. And first thing you got to do, if you're going to try to do this the long way, up by your backspace key, upper right-hand side, is a plus sign and an equal sign. We just want the equal sign. So now we're going to start creating a formula. So the first thing I'm going to say is we talked about formulas, we talked about functions. Think of formulas kind of like a sentence, all right? Has a lot of different descriptive words in there. It's got action words, we call them verbs. It's got adjectives, it's got nouns, different things. So you could say a function is kind of like a verb. It's kind of the action of what's going to happen in a formula. But really, all a formula is a bunch of coding that's going to create some effect. In this case, we're trying to add up what's in this column. And so the verb in this case, or the function, would be to sum things up. And already, because we have these values here, these numbers, it's given us some suggestions just by putting the equal sign in there because of our the spatial relationship between this. I mean, if this was way over here, it's not going to think we're adding this up. But because we're right below it, it's already trying to make a guess. So this is actually a form of machine learning, and that's pretty cool. So we can see that it's saying, hey, is this what you want to do? There it is. Actually hovering over it, it says suggested based on the data. That's pretty cool. So sum is the function. And then we have to see, we see some symbols that you need to become familiar with. We see the open parenthesis and the closed parenthesis, because always inside the parentheses is going to be our cell reference or our cell range. In this case, we have E10 through, that's what the colon means, and you just play with this for a little while and you start to get familiar with this and you take a look at it and it all makes sense. E10 through E15. Let's take a look down there. So here's E10 through E15. That would be perfect. And I will tell you that if we were to go ahead and write this out, and we can always write it out, or I can click here and take the suggestion. I'm not going to do that just yet. But you can see just by hovering over it, it's like, hey, is this what you want? If I got rid of that colon and I put a comma in there, then I would be saying basically add up E10 and E15. Well, we want the range. We want E10 through E15, so we want to keep the colon. All right. So let's say that this down here wasn't making much sense and we weren't sure what to do. There's different ways we can go about it. That's actually exactly what we want to do. In fact, you know what? In the interest of time, I'm going to do it this way. We're going to show you some other ways to get to the functions as we build formulas. But here we go. What's this 30 that's up there? It's actually telling us what these numbers added up. It's showing us a preview, if you will. So it's not completely helpless. It's going to help you along a little bit, but again, if you don't understand, what a function is and all this other stuff, it's not really guiding you through. You have to come to this with some sophistication, some understanding of how these things work. But again, you just do this a few times and it will start to make sense and it'll get easier. And we're going to get into some very complex formulas here in just a minute, but we're starting with this basic one. So again, E10 through E15, and here is the formula, and that's what that looks like. And there's actually the total that we're going to see down here. So I'm going to go ahead at this point and just hit enter. I could also click into another cell. Well, it depends on what you're doing, or where you're at when you're setting it up. But usually you hit enter, and that will start the thing. So here we have 30. And if we click on it, now's your chance to see that even though there's a 30 here, it actually has in the background a formula that's running. All right. And if I were to go up here and I were to change this 5 and make it into a 15, see if I can get up here, make it into a 15, and I hit enter, then presumably because this formula is dealing with the range, in this case E10 through E15, it should add another 10 to this. So let's see what happens if I hit enter. Sure enough, it did. All right. Well, we know that this formula is from E10 with the colon there. It's the range of E10 through E15. But what if we want to add a 5 down here in E16? That's outside of that formula's range. If we were in Excel and I hit enter right now, this 40 would become a 45. But in Sheets, it doesn't have that sophisticated machine learning, and so it doesn't know what you're trying to do. So why did it not go up to 45? It's very simple. We click on the formula again. The range that we set up was E10 through E15, not E16. Well, guess what? We can go back here and put our cursor in and simply go back 1, and you're going to see this jump around because it thinks we're trying to tell it to go to E1, which is up here, and that's the range, but it's not. We're going to add 16. Now we can see that E16 is part of the range, and if I hit enter, well, now you're going to have that additional 5. So a couple things. Again, there's my little hand I put on the side. I could put my formula anywhere. And again, the range does not include E17, but if I go to my formula and I come over here, for example, and instead of the range of E10 through E16, I'm going to make it E10 through 20, E20. So now we can see that there's a much bigger field here, much bigger cell reference or range, we call that. And as soon as I hit enter, it's all good. So now I can go here and I can add another 5 and watch what happens over here. So I just go 5, enter, 5, enter. So you get the idea. And so anytime you want to adjust how a formula works, or the cells that it's referencing, or in this case, the range that the formula is referencing, we can do that right up here. So there's your first easiest introduction into how to build a formula. And again, this is a function, sum. That's just a word that represents part of a formula, in this case, adding things up. All right, so let's go take a look over here real quick. Here we see this sign here. Happens to be the symbol for functions, a sigma sign. Here's some of the most common ones that they put right up at the top for you. That's the sum that we did before. And then over here we have a list of all of our functions. And again, we saw in our online handbook that there's a lot of them. And this is broken up into categories. This one, of course, is all of them. If I click on that and come over here, you see how small that elevator bar is. If I grab it We go through a lot. There's got to be hundreds, if not 1,000, that are in there. But as far as array, if that's something that you are doing in your department, then here's all of the array functions. And again, what's a function? Just a small chunk of formula represented by a word. In fact, if you hover over them, it's going to give you a little idea of what it all means. But trust me, it's hard to understand some of this language, the way it works. So here's another category, database. Depending on where you are in the district, you might use that. Date, engineering. Just know that Excel, for example, not so much Sheets, but Excel is used by Wall Street, it's used by big corporations, it's used by NASA, it's used by MIT because of all the things that they can do. For our purposes, depending again what department we're in, there's some that are probably more significant than others. So math, here's the math functions. And if I look through here, why I go down to the S's, and of course I'm going to find sum. There it is. And let's see what it says. Sum of a series of numbers and or cells. That's exactly what we did. That's what that function does. It's going to add up whatever the range is of cells that we put in there. So that's pretty cool. So math might be something we get to use. But the one that most schools are going to use is down here in text. All right. And so let's go in here and take a look at a couple of these. Proper capitalizes each word in a specific string. Okay. I can see how that works, like a proper name, a proper noun is always capitalized at the beginning. That will come in handy later. I promise it will. So len, what the heck is that? Length of a string. All right, if we're new to this, not quite sure what a string is yet, but it's the length of it. Has something to do with it. We're going to see that function in just a moment. And then we go up to this crazy word here. Oh, hello. Let's get back there. This crazy one, concatenate. Appends strings to one another. So again, if you were new at this and you were trying to figure out how to move some names around, which we're going to do in a moment, you would likely not have any idea that concatenate is exactly the function we want to use. And again, if you were using Excel, you'd have like a wizard trying to guide you along or whatever. But that's okay. The functions and the formulas that work in Excel will also work in Google Sheets. So let's take a look at that. So let's go down here to our next tab. Oh, by the way, if you're in Sheets, it's pretty cool. So there's a number of different ways to do things. Remember that you can always right-click on something, and you'll see some different options in a menu, depending on what you're right-clicking on. So here we go. We can delete this entire sheet. We can duplicate it. We can copy it and send it to somewhere else. We could rename it. We could change the color. We could do a number of different things. And if you remember, let's go ahead and just make this red just for fun. Come on, change color. Red. All right. So you remember in our Excel, we had a purple one, but the whole thing was purple. Well, here, Google Sheets does a little bit different. They just put a line down at the bottom. And I have my Zoom windows open there, so I can't see what these colors are, but I see this one's red over here, and this one's blue. And so that's kind of cool, because in Excel, when you click on the one that's all red, when you click on it, it fades to like pink, and you can't really tell what color it is anyway. But how do we rename this? There's a couple different ways we can do it, but the easiest way is just to double click on it. And just for fun, one of my favorite cartoon characters, Fred Flintstone. There we go. I've just renamed it. Click away somewhere. And of course, you can go up to here. You can go up to rename. You can do it that way. It's the exact same thing as just double clicking on it. So that's kind of cool. But for the next thing we're going to do, we're going to click on this tab, last name, comma, space, first name. And what we want to do, and this is actually a real world example. Let me go ahead and zoom in here a little bit. Click up here, hold down my control key, roll my mouse wheel, get it a little bit bigger. You'll notice that the bigger you get it, less things show up here, because you're actually zooming in the entire page in your browser. But those features are still available. They're just over here now in this little ellipsis, which just generally means more things. So they're all still there. But for the purpose of kind of zooming in, we're going to do it this way. All right, so go away. There we go. All right, so someone came to us once upon a time and said, hey, Mr. J, we got this problem at our site. We've got all of the first names in one column, all of the last names in another, and my principal wants it last name, comma, space, first name. So what's the formula for that? Of course, my answer is always, I have no idea. And so you Google it, and you just try to figure it all out, and you can do that. So I'm going to go ahead and just widen that a little bit so we can do it in here. So right here, we want a formula that's going to deal with these different names and try and put it in the proper format. In this case, last name, comma, space, first name. So here's where you're going to see right away that you have to have some experience to be able to do this, to figure it out on your own. The good news is if you are responsible for the names of a bunch of students or names somewhere in the district, you can just take this formula, and as long as you make sure the cell references are the same, the formula will work every time. We happen to be in the columns of E and F, but your list might be in columns A and B, so then the formula would represent those particular columns and cells. So just something to keep in mind. So again, here we go. First thing we're going to do is we want to start off with an equal sign, or we could just go straight to the functions and try and find which function we're going to use and then hover over it and do it that way. But since we're right here and we haven't started and I haven't done an equal sign yet, there's another way to get to it. So let's see if we can remember where those formulas are. I'm kind of zoomed in. So how about insert? There it is. All right. So again, just practice going around. And by the way, that little green dot is because there's something new. So that's your little tip off that there's something new there. So I'm in the insert column, and I'm going to go down to functions, just one of several ways to access the exact same stuff. And so again, because we're dealing with text, I'm not interested in the array formulas or database or engineering or whatever, or even math. I'm going to go all the way down here to text. And then I have to know, or at least have some sophistication to understand what strings are. To understand the concatenate is what we want. And so just in the interest of time, I'm just going to tell you that is exactly what we want. And by the way, if you can remember how to spell concatenate, you could have put an equal sign, written out concatenate, and as you're typing, it will say, is this what you want? Little suggestions, so you don't actually have to remember how to do it. So equal sign, concatenate, and here's our cell range. So here's the first trick. Our cell range is going to be both an F1 and also an E1, but there's a catch to it. So let's get started. So first the last name and then a comma. All right, well that's an F1. I can either type in an F1 right now, or I can just left click on F1, in this case Gable, and we get started. A couple things to notice. All right, by the way, our formula is not done until we finish filling out all this stuff and putting the range, and then we hit the enter key. So we're still building it. That's why you see all these colors. But right here is our little sample up at the top. It's saying, all right, well, that's the first thing you're going to do. Append strings. That's what this said it was going to do for us. So let's see how that works. So there it is, Gable. So now we want a comma and a space. We have a problem. Remember when we had ranges before, and with the colon, it was like F1 through E1, or in our case of the summing up those number 5s, we had E10 through E15. We used the colon, and I told you that if we had a comma in there, that meant end. It meant like, you know, just E10 and plus E15, for example. So right now, we have to understand a little bit about what we're doing, and I have to put an actual comma in there. Why? Because now I want to add another aspect or something to this formula to make this work. So again, here's where you're not going to get any help. I have to know that if I want to add, and by the way, if we look at our sample up here, you don't see a comma up there. We're trying to get last name or Gable, comma, space, Clark. You don't see the comma there because all this comma is for is allowing us to do the next chunk that we're going to put into this formula. So I have to know that if I want a comma and a space, because commas are used for something else in here, I have to enclose it in something that kind of protects it or separates it so that the formula will understand what we're doing. And that happens to be right next to your enter key, you have a quotation mark, so you hold the shift key and you tap the quotation mark, all right? And then I can put a comma, and then I can hit the space bar. And if you look up here, what's happening as I did that, it's starting to spread out, and finally we see our comma, right? And then to protect it from the next part, which is going to be the first name, I have to end it with a quotation mark. So shift key, hit the quotation mark there. And now we can see we have Gable, comma, and a space. Well, now we need to put the next chunk. And remember, each chunk that you're putting in here has to have a comma. So even though I'm going to add another comma right now, you're not going to see another one appear because that's just the symbol that's allowing us to put the next section. So we see it kind of going along here, and it's looking pretty good. So right now I can click on E1, or just to show you, because my cursor's in the right place, this is not case sensitive. Sorry, let me get my thing out of the way. Not case sensitive. So I'm going to hit an E, and it says, oh, are you trying to put in a nested function somewhere? No, we just want to do E1. So then I hit the 1, and now it says, oh, that's what you're doing. And so if we look up at the sample here, Gable, comma, space, Clark. That's exactly what we want. And so I can go ahead and hit enter. But before I do that, I want you to appreciate the fact that you had to have some level of understanding of putting this together that Sheets did not provide for you. And again, Excel does provide some tutorials that will help you get through things. But if this is something you have to do at your site or your department in the district, guess what? You've got this formula. All you have to do is change the cell references, and now you're learning some tricks of how you can add like a comma and a space and all that. So again, doesn't have to be case sensitive as far as the cell references. So now all I got to do is hit enter, and we'll see what happens in G1 where we started building our formula. Enter. There we go. So just like the sample showed us, it did Gable, comma, space, Clark. Some of you have already noticed, hey, Mr. J, Gable's not capitalized, it's a proper name. Well, we have another function for that. And that was actually something that someone asked us in one of our classes, and so we had to figure out how to do it. We'll show you that in a second. But a couple things. I click on G1. The values, these letters, which just happen to spell out someone's name, in fact, a very famous person, but here's the formula that's operating behind the scenes. So concatenate, append strings. So now we know Gable and Clark are simply strings of data. There's strings of values, in this case letters, that they happen to spell a name. So what is the cell reference inside these parentheses? F1, of course, is the last name. And then we wanted a comma and a space, but because we already had commas in there, that's how you build your formula and your cell references, I had to put that comma and space in between the quotation marks, and then another comma, so then I can add the next cell reference, which was E1 or Clark, the first name. And sure enough, that's exactly what it looks like. So if I were to build the same formula right down here in G2, because we just did this in G1, let's think about that for a moment. This name, G1, is referring to F1 and E1. It says it right there. So if I were to build it right here, the next one, I couldn't say E1 and F1. I'd have to say, in this case, F2 and E2, because it's going to be different. But here's something cool. Remember I told you about the black magic plus sign? There it is. And I told you that if we wanted to, we could move this formula anywhere we want to. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to copy the formula. So with my black magic plus sign, I can left click and drag it down. And as far as I drag it and let it go, I've copied the formula, with one subtle important difference, that instead of the reference of E1 and F1, which refers to the data to the left of Clark Gable, how did we get the right one for Ava Gardner? Because it knew that it needed to change it from F1 and E1 to F2 and E2, and then Cary Grant would be 3, and then Lana Turner would be F4 and E4, and of course all the way down. I'm going to hit my undo button real quick, one time. We still have our formula up here at the top. And here's why this is the black magic plus sign. So again, let's see if I can scroll out of here just a little bit. All right, I just wanted you to be able to see this. So our data ends down here in row 11, right? Well, if I get my black magic plus sign, you know you can left click and drag, but if you hold it real still and you double click it, watch what it will do. Now that's pretty slick. So because it recognized the formula is dealing with what's to the left of it, and you know, again, E2, F2, E3, F3, E4, whatever, all the way down to Jimi Hendrix, which happens to be E11 and F11. It knew to copy what was next to it because it was anticipating through machine learning of how to do that. So that's pretty cool, right? There you go. So we went back to this other part. Well, Mr. J, we've got this problem Gable is lowercase, and oh look, Carrie and Lana. Oh wow, Lana both last name and first name. We've got a case problem here. We need to have these are proper names. We need to have the first letter in each one capitalized. How do we do that? So we can build a formula that's over here. And again, with experience, you can remember how to do this. So if I wanted to, I could go and start searching through, the functions or whatever, and go find what it is I'm looking for. If I want to, I can go up to, where was it? Insert. I have to remember where it was. Was it in data? Format? Okay. Or if you already know how to do it, is my point, you can just start building it. So here we go. All formulas start with what? An equal sign. And we need a function that's going to change things to capital letters at the very beginning of each word. Well, that's the proper function. We saw that already. So we don't have to bother going back and wasting our time doing that. And it's not case sensitive. So look, as I start to type, PR starts giving me these different ideas of what it is. And check that out. As I hover over it, it says capitalizes each word in a specific string. Well, that's pretty cool. That's actually the one I want. So I can either click on that, or I can continue to type it out. I'm going to go ahead and click. All right. And by clicking on that, it gave us our first open parenthesis. That's great. So what is it we're going to apply the proper formula function in this formula to? Well, it's just G1. So I can type in G1, or I can just click on G1. I'm going to go ahead and put G1 in. Again, it's not case sensitive. And it's showing us a sample of what it's going to do. And sure enough, it's working exactly right. So if I hit return right now or enter, it should put the last parenthesis in. But just for the sake of doing it the long way, I'm going to go ahead and use my keyboard and type and put that in there. Now it's done. And we know it's referencing this range here. We kind of saw these yellow little dash lines around our fives, if you remember, from E10 to E15 on the previous worksheet. But anyway, there it is. And all I have to do now is hit enter to set that formula. So there it is, the formula, equal sign, proper. And what's the cell range? In this case, it's just a single one. The cell reference is G1. Perfect. And then our little black magic plus sign, double click, bam, there it is. So we just took something that, a name that was in two different columns, and we fixed it into one column, but then we noticed that, and by the way, consider for a moment, yeah, I could just go in here and type and make that C large and change those T and the L to uppercase. But if you have 2,500 students at your site, or if you're working in a department, you're dealing with 8,000 employees, it's nice to know how to do this. And guess what? If this list was 2,500 names or 25,000 names, and you applied the proper function in this formula, it would work for all of them. And that black magic plus sign becomes even more magic when it's able to do such large data sets all the way down. So let's consider something for a moment. Well, we have column G. We kind of don't need that anymore because, well, let's see, got lowercase stuff. This is the one we want. So let's use our tricks here, and we go up and select all of G, and I'm going to hit the delete key, and we're going to get rid of G. And by the way, when I do, what's going to happen is H, when I erase all of column G, H, the data in H slides in there, and that becomes column G. So here we go. I'm going to hit delete. Oh dear, something went terribly wrong. Let's figure it out. Let's go back here to undo. So by erasing, let's look at this way. By erasing G1, this over here disappeared. Let's find out why. Because the formula is referencing G1. And if nothing exists in G1 because we erase it, then this doesn't exist. So that means we can't get rid of any of this stuff without affecting the formulas over here, because every one of these names has a different formula with a different cell reference. Okay, no problem. Well, let's at least just get rid of the first and last names. We don't need that. So I'm going to hit delete there. Oh dear, we've got another problem. All right, so this is a silly example, but it's just pointing out the fact that in G1, the cell references are E1 and F1. So I cannot get rid of E1 and F1 without affecting the formula here and how this works. Well, I can't get rid of this because it references, or I'm sorry, the formula here references G1, so I can't get rid of what's in G. So what the heck can we do? Well, here we go. I'm going to tell you. If we select, this is the one we want to keep, and these other ones we don't want to keep. But if we select the entire column by simply clicking on the column name, H, and then you right-click, let's take a look at what we can do. Well, we can copy it. When you copy it, you're not only copying the values that you see here, in this case letters, but you're also copying the formulas. But guess what? In the same exact place where we just saw all these formulas all the way down, I can right-click, but this time when I paste, if I just do regular paste, it's going to put the letter values down, the names that you see, and also the formulas behind it. If I go to paste special, look at this, the first choice, paste values only. That's why I'm calling numbers and letters values, because that's all they really are as far as Excel is concerned. And there's a formula behind it. We want to get rid of it. So what we're going to do is simply paste the values. Now, when we click on any of these, you don't see the formula that's behind it because we copied everything, including the formula behind it, and then we paste special and said, just give us the values back. And that's how that worked. So then we can come over here and say delete, and guess what? It all goes away. It can't affect this because there are no formulas anymore affecting that. All right, so that's pretty cool. So now you have that formula that we just used, and you can apply that anywhere you want to. Just make sure you have the right cell references. Okay, so let's see, we go down here to full names. So again, I shared with you that someone said, hey, Mr. J, that's great, but that's not our problem. We want to separate this out. So how can we do that? There's a couple things that I want to share with you. Yeah, I think I'll share with you another shortcut that I learned not too long ago. It was something new that was added on the sheets that wasn't there a couple years ago when I first started teaching them. All right, I realize our time is flying along when we're trying to get through all this. There's some very detailed things that we have to discuss, and so it takes a little bit longer, but that's okay. We're going to have this video available to you so we can go through this. So we want to put, in this case, B2, a formula that somehow takes out the last name and puts it here. And we want that formula to go all the way down so we can have all the last names. And then the first names, we want to be able to put over there. So what's the formula? So when someone asked me that and said, hey, Mr. J, what's the formula for doing that? I have no idea. So I Googled it. And it took me a couple of tries to find a little tutorial somewhere. And of course, their cell references were different because I have mine in A and B, but theirs were over here somewhere. So I had to figure out and understand the cell references to make sure it worked. But here's the formula. I actually put it down here at the bottom. I'm going to click on it. Remember we said you can have the formula in any cell and it will reference back to wherever you want it to. So let's look at the cell references. A2, A2, A2. That's what we see. What's A2? Clark Gable. So there it is. There's Gable, the last name. That's the formula for it. And for the first name, a little bit different. I thought, let's go ahead and move this so it's easier to understand. So again, get my little magic hands. We're practicing our features here. I hold it up here and it slowly goes towards the top. I then let go of my left mouse button and I drop it right there so it's a little bit easier to see. So right, well, I guess that means the right one there. A2, well, yeah, that's the cell we want. Len, we saw that before. It had to do with length of strings. But then we have like a nested cell reference with nested functions in here. In this case, a minus sign. Wow. Here's the deal. You don't have to understand exactly what that's saying and how it works, other than this complex formula right here simply takes the last name out of two names and sticks it right here. That's the formula. So when I first figured out that formula, I thought, okay, that's great. So how do I do the first name? I'm a smart guy. I'll just change right to left. It's probably going to work. Well, that's what I thought. It didn't work. Let's go ahead and drag this up to the top so we can put it up there, easier to see what we're referencing here. So there's the left one. So kind of looks similar, but as you can see, the right one has a lot more nesting going on than the left one, meaning the right name versus the left name and the full name there. All right, so that's pretty cool. Great. So we'll use our Black Magic plus sign. We're going to copy the formula all the way down. And instead of A2, we're going to see A3, A4, A5. And it's kind of a good idea to once in a while when you use formulas to kind of like poke around and see what changes up here. It'll help you understand what all these different references are and how it works. So again, we want to do the other one. So simply just double click and it copies all the way down. So again, we can't erase this right here because it's being referenced by both of these formulas. So if we wanted to, we could then select this entire column, copy it, and then right click on it again, and then click paste special just values only, and get rid of the formula that's in fact behind each one of these. We're not going to take the time to do that, but that's how that works. But I wanted to show you something. So I'm just going to left click and drag down here. I'm not going to remove these, but I am going to copy them. All right, and then over here somewhere, I'm going to paste. I just want them to be there. And again, I'm going to spread this out a little bit so it's easier to see. All right, so here we have this, and this is a new something that showed up, and I don't even know when it showed up, but it did. And I just wanted you to see other options that you have, and you can kind of experiment with it to see how it works. It's somewhere up here, and I got to remember where it is. I believe it's in data. There it is, all the way down at the bottom. Again, I'm kind of zoomed in, so I have to go way down there to find it. Split text into columns. Now I've selected all of that data in column F. So split text into columns. Let's try that, see what it does. Okay, separator. What is it talking about? Detect automatically. Well, if we click on what the options are, we're going to see that the separators are, in this case, a space. Sometimes it's a comma, depending on what data you're starting with. Kind of like this over here. We have commas that are separating those. Let's go back. Oh boy. Let's go back up to data, split text in the column. All right, so let's see what our options are. Detect automatically, which works pretty good. I've tried it a number of ways. Commas, you got semicolons, you got periods, or just a space. Or maybe there's something custom that's in there and you can figure that out. But we're just going to go ahead and click space because that's what it is. And look what it did. So Stevie Ray Vaughan is 3 names. And so when it says split text, it just simply split it out like this. So then we could actually have a header up here that says middle names. This header could say last names, and this header could say first names. And so without any kind of if you look up here, we have our formula bar. There are no formulas up there, just the letter values are showing up. So that's another way that you can start splitting things apart. You can experiment with that to see how that works. That, compared to this crazy formula, might be not a bad way to do it. And then you could go up here and you could put first names, right there, and last names right here. And if you want it the same way here, I could just grab this and drag it and drop it over on the other side and change the order of it. All right, so I just wanted you to be aware of that. That's pretty slick. Okay, so we're going to go now to our short version. I realize time is flying by, but there's just so much with the formulas to go over. So a couple things real quick we just noticed about this. We have our headers up here. You can't quite see them all because they're kind of small in there. There's not enough room. It's too narrow. And we know that we can go up here and double click and make it wide enough. In this case, we can see all of entry codes. Plenty of room down here. But here's one thing you need to know, and this is very helpful. Anytime you click between A and 1, it selects everything. And when it does, it doesn't matter which column you're in. You go between any of them. And when you hold it like this and you double click, it in effect is going to spread out everything. Pay attention to the J column. Not sure how wide it needs to be to fit all these things in here, but now that we've selected everything by clicking between A and 1, we can go to any one of these, hold our mouse cursor like this, double click, and every one of these columns will spread out. If we look at J, the widest one is Linda Vista Elementary State Preschool. That's a great idea to do stuff like that if you want to spread things out so you can see it. And I will tell you, when you have 2,500 different students, in the case of a high school, some of our bigger high schools, and they all came from different schools from before they got to your high school, you may not know what the widest one is. And so just dragging it, opening it up doesn't always work. But if you do that double click, maybe down in number 2050 of your 2,500 students, someone came from a name of a school that's really long, and it will actually be wide enough so you can see everything all the way down. So that's that. A couple other things we can do. If we select the number 1, which is the row name, now it's highlighted all the way across. And then we can explore a couple other things that we could do. If you look over here, we hover over that, it says text rotation. And you look and we see we have some right now. See the little blue boxes around this one because that's the way it is. It's going from left to right. We have it spelled out that way. This one goes up at an angle. Looks like about 45 down. Unfortunately, again, you can't preview these, so you just have to click on them. And then it will do it. And if that's not what you wanted, you could go right back up there and change the next one, or I could hit undo. I'm just going to go over here and say, well, let's try this one where it goes straight up. Well, that to me is annoying. It's not very helpful either. So I would say let's make it go back to something like that. And why would you want to do that? Some of your headers can be very lengthy, and if you only have data that's just a couple characters wide like this, you don't want to have a column that's 4 inches wide. You could simply tilt things up at an angle or whatever. So that's helpful, something that you can do. Let's go ahead and go now to enrollment by date. I'm going to show you something slick. So again, we're looking at this last school grade, last school name. Doesn't quite everything fit. Things are kind of stuck in their grade levels, kind of smushed, all of that. So again, go between A and 1, go between any one of these column names and double click, expands them all out, and then now we can see everything a little bit easier. And again, this is the one that goes down to 473 students all the way down there. And but here's the thing. So here we have last name, we have first name, birth date. That's great. But we start to scroll down a little bit. Do you remember what this one was called? And is this birth date? No, that looks like birth date. This is all the same dates. Maybe that's when they came into school. Not really sure. I can't remember what this is. Wouldn't it be helpful if we had, that first row kind of frozen? That's kind of cool. So basically, we can go up here and we just have to remember where it is. So if we have done this fairly often, we might remember it's in the View tab. We go to Freeze, and it just says 1 row. So I will tell you that it will freeze whatever row is at the top. So if I had scrolled down and row 85 was at the top and I did that, it would just freeze 85. So now, anywhere I go down here, all the way to the bottom or whatever, I will know that this is entry code. And here's something cool that Google Sheets does, that in Excel, you can also freeze rows and columns so that they stay on your page. But if you want to print something, there's a whole separate thing that you have to do. And I will just tell you, I don't want to print this out on my home printer. Well, let's take a look. Here's, ends up being 48 pages, because again, it's 473 students. And so if I want to scroll to the next one, you'll notice that the header stays at the top of each one. And that's pretty cool. And that all that was, I'm going to go ahead and cancel, don't want to accidentally print that. And it's all because we just simply went to View, and we went to Freeze, and we froze 1 row. Or maybe you have 2 that you need to, or whatever. So that's pretty helpful. All right, so again, I'm way down here in the 200s. Hold down my Control key, tap the Home button, and it takes me back up to the top. That's a great little shortcut to use. All right, so at this point, we're already an hour and 45 minutes into this, and I realized we had some talking at the beginning, but that's okay. We're gonna get to one more thing here real quick, and actually 2 things. Let's do it this way. So in Excel, you can do custom sorting. Well, you can do sorting here as well. So if you have last names, you can see we have an A, an M, an A, and so on and so forth. So it's clearly not in alphabetical order. So if I click on the column name, and then I can go up here and I could find, where it is that we can do that. And there's actually the place where you can do it, do different things, or I can just right click on it, and let's see if we have that option there. There it goes, Sort Sheet A to Z. And I want to point something out. When you do this in Excel, it always has a little window pop up and says, are you sure you want to do that? You want to expand the selection? And we'll just talk about that for a second. So if I put these names in alphabetical order, but the first names stay the same, in fact, Sabah Acosta, that's her birthday, her grade level, her gender, all this information to the left and to the right, her student number is all there. You would never want to change this into alphabetical order and not expand the selection to the left and right. So in Excel, it always gives you a little ping. Are you sure you want to do this? Do you want to expand the selection? And you select and say, yes, expand the selection. Well, in Sheets, they just cut to the chase and said, hey, of course you're going to want to keep everything to the side. So you just click on it, A to Z, and it changes. So Sabah Acosta, all of her information to the left and right is the same, and the same with Camille, and everybody else is down here. So if we look, we've got all 374 students in alphabetical order. And I could scroll through this and get all the way down to the Z's. I'm not going to bother doing that. So what if now we want to, maybe we want to sort by grade level? Well, that's a good idea. We could maybe do that. And by the way, you cannot always sort. You can do multiple sorts together that affect each other, but some of them are going to absolutely eliminate the one before. So for example, if I tried to sort first names in alphabetical order, then obviously those first names are connected to last names that aren't going to be in alphabetical order, so you'd have to choose one or the other. But for this case, we have all last names, alphabetical order. Let's see what happens if we come over here and we do grade level. So I'm going to right click. You can also go over here and hit this. You should be able to find it. Same idea. Sort A to Z. By the way, you're going to see zeros for those of you that are at schools in middle and upper. In elementary school, 0 is a kindergartner, because a 1, of course, is a first grader. So here we go. We have all of our kindergartners, male and female kindergartners, all of them in order here by alphabetical order. Let's go down and find our first graders. There's quite a few kindergartners at this school. There's our first grader right there. Happens to be Camille Acosta. Wow, look at this. We just saw all of the kindergartners. Their names are still in alphabetical order. And sure enough, right here, the first grader starts over in A. And as we scroll down, we see we get into the F's and G's and H's. And as we get towards the end of the first graders, the last first grader happens to be a Z, and then the next grade up, a second grader, happens to be A, followed by B, and so on and so forth. So by sorting this one first and this one next, we've got some interesting way to display that. So we can even try this a little bit further. Go to gender, and let's just go ahead and say A to Z. And since female comes before male as far as alphabetizing it or in the alphabet, then we're going to see all the females first. So this is interesting. So it looks like A, B, C, D. We still have some alphabetical order here of the last names, but now it says grade level. That's interesting. Oh, that's because we were already down there. We were down in those rows. I'll do my control home. There it is. Get back up to the top. Okay, so we're still A, B, C, D. We're still in alphabetical order. We start off with our kinders here. And now we have all of the females in the kindergarten. And let's see where the males are going to be. Aha. So the way that this is set up is now we have all of the second graders in alphabetical order, but it looks like we have all of the females in kindergarten through 5th grade, and then we go back and start over again, kindergarten through 5th grade, all of the males, and again in alphabetical order. So again, there are some limitations to what you can do, but you can compound the sorting, if you will, by starting with one and going to the next, and you can change things around. And last but not least, if I undo those last two, I'm going to go ahead and just do that real quick. Undo those last three. So if over here I wanted to just show 5th graders or something like that, why, I could go up here to the filter button and click on this, and if you scroll down a little bit, you can say, well, what do you want to do? How come I only see kindergarten 1st and 2nd? Well, we got this little elevator bar here. So I'm kind of zoomed in so you don't quite see everything. But let's say I just want to see 2nd and 3rd graders. So I deselect those two, and deselect 4th and 5th. And now if I click OK, I'm going to see just 2nd and 3rd graders. And sure enough, there's all the 2nd and 3rd graders. And again, if I wanted to put those in order, I could. 2nd graders first. However I want to do, if I want to put all female and then male, or vice versa with the 2nd and 3rd graders, I could do that. And that's just another way to sort. So let's go ahead and undo that as well. All right. So the last thing that I'm going to show you in Google Sheets is the pivot table. We're going to go fairly quickly through this, and if you're brand new to pivot tables, it wouldn't matter how slow we go. It's one of those things that you just have to kind of just get in, poke around, and figure it out. And again, if you're at a school site, you might be dealing with a big giant table like this and try to turn it into a pivot table so you can see the information a little bit easier in different ways. Or if you're in a purchasing department, your pivot table is going to be totally different. So the example I'm going to give isn't going to necessarily be relevant, if we try to get that word out, to you, but at least we can see what those features are. So here we go. We're on enrollment by date. Again, we have 473 students. We have a number of different columns of different information in there. And let's just take a look at what we can do. So let's see if we can find pivot table. And you might remember that it's in data, I believe. Where is it? There it is, scrolling up and down. Pivot table. So the first thing it's going to do is say, all right, create pivot table. What's your data range? And so we have to have a little experience to say, enrollment by date. Where have I seen that before? Ah, that's the name of this worksheet. Okay. And it happens to be with these little apostrophes that are kind of enclosing that. So it's saying that's the data range on this sheet. And let's take another look. We've got this exclamation point, but it says A1, and we know what the colon is. It's A1 through K474. Why 474? We have 473 students, but we also have a header. So the last student is down there in row 474. And what is K? If we look over here, our columns, I'm kind of zoomed in so you don't see it all. Actually, maybe what I'll do is let's actually fix that so we can see it. It might be a little less confusing. All right, that's a little better. So I will tell you that K is the last column that we have. And so again, I'm going to go to data, I'm going to go to pivot table. And so again, we're looking at this. And it says A1 through K74. So a couple things about this. Let's see if this will allow us to move this around. That's good, I can move it. So last school name, last school grade, maybe that's not something that we need in this pivot table. So if we wanted to, instead of A1 through K474, we could change it to A1 through, how about just to I? And we can do that right now. So I can go in here and I can click and I just backspace it. And again, it's not case sensitive, so I just put a lowercase I in there. And so now my pivot table is not going to cover this data over here. It's going to allow me to deal with data all the way from A to I and all the way down to the bottom. But something to note here, if this is truly a school list, there's going to be students that are leaving, but there'll be also students that will be coming. You know, maybe this month we get 3 new students, next month we get 5 or 10, depending on how big your school is. And so if you create a pivot table and you're like manipulating data in there, but you've added 10 new students last month and you created this pivot table 2 months ago, those 10 new students aren't necessarily going to be in here unless 10 students have removed and that row 474 covers it all. So you're probably already thinking ahead and think, well, can I change that? Can you have empty space down at the bottom? Absolutely you can. I can put 700 here if I want. And so just know that if I took the time to scroll to the bottom at 475, row 475, it's just empty and blank. But what I've done is I've added a cushion in here. So again, becoming familiar with what data ranges look like and what these symbols are, you can start to change things and make your life a lot easier. So where are we creating this pivot table? Do we want it to be on this sheet? Do we want it to be off to the right somewhere? No, that's too much. Let's put it on its own new sheet. So again, we started on enrollment by date. It's already selected to new sheet. Let's go ahead and say create. All right. So the first thing, we're taking a look at this. We're like, okay, pivot table 1, right there. It just kicked it out to the right of enrollment by date where we started from. And let's take a look. Rows, values, columns. Well, nothing's making any sense just yet. We see all these add things to rows, add things to column, add things to values, and filters and all that. But look at here. It says, and by the way, here's our range. What we did before, we set it up to I-700. That's cool. So suggested. Let's just take a look and see if any of these make sense. Number of unique first names for each entry code. Oh, that's interesting. Let's look at the next one. Count of last name for entry description. Okay, I'm not sure what that is. We'll take a look at that in a second. Number of unique first names for each entry date. These are suggestions. Just understand that whatever you choose, you can infinitely go back and change whatever's in the columns and put them in rows, and whatever's in the rows, put them in columns. You cannot do that in a table. So let's just look at this second one. Count of last name for each entry description. Since those entry codes are kind of hard to remember, like RT and RH, we don't want to have to remember what that is. We'll just actually get the entry description. So count of last name for each entry description. I'm going to go ahead and click on this and watch what happens over on the left. Well, we remember that we can always expand things so we can see it better. So we just double click on that. All right, now we can see all the different entry descriptions. And this is count of last name. Well, since each student has its own last name, even though there might be 3 Rodriguez's or 14 Smiths or something like that, it doesn't matter. You're counting up the number of last names, it still works. There's our 473 students. So that could work. We could also do count of, instead of last names, we could do count of student ID numbers, something like that. So there it is. So what this is saying is, as far as enter from charter school in the district, I guess is what that's saying, there's 1 student. We don't know if that's a male or female, but we know there's 1 student. Enter from InfoSnap, 1 student. Enter from out of the district, 9. Enter from out of state, 26. We have these numbers here, so we have some information that could be helpful, but maybe we want to know what gender this is. Is this a male or female, either of these, and what are these numbers here? What's the breakdown? So now we can do some stuff. Let's see. So rows, add. We'll go ahead and see what we can do here. Click on that. This should look familiar. Student number, last name, first name, birth date, grade level, all these different things. Those are the columns that were in our enrollment by date worksheet. In this case, we want to just do gender. So, so this looks a little confusing, but let's take a look here real quick. So enter from charter school is 1. All right. Enter from charter school, for some reason, let's get a little more space there. See if that's a little better. So we know that that 1 student is male. And then enter from charter school, that's the total. See how this gets a little confusing, because you're trying to figure out this 3 pertains to females, 6 to males. Well, 3 and 6 is 9, so I know that these 3 females and 6 males has to do with this right here. But that's a little bit confusing. So here's our first opportunity to see the power of what a pivot table can do. And so what I can do then is say, well, I don't want the gender to be in rows. How about we put it in columns? Maybe that'd be a little easier. So I go over here, and again, we're kind of zoomed in on this, but so in the rows, we have the entry description, and then we also have the gender. Well, maybe I want to put the gender in columns. So I can just grab this and drag it down below columns and let it go. And look what's happened now. Oh, that's a lot easier to read. But there's still some things we could do. So we said enter from charter school. There was 1, and happens to be in the male category. Well, that's still not helping us. So we can use our tricks that we learned. Go up here and left click on B2 and drag over to C2. I've selected both of those. And now I can go up here and I can find my alignment, which is this one here. And I can make them right justified. And now it's a little bit easier to see. All right. So now we know that these are the males, these are the females. Makes it a little bit easier. If we wanted to, we could click on here where it says gender. And then we could go up here and we could say, well, let's go ahead and just put that in the middle so it's a little easier to read. So you get the idea that you can start to change things around as far as what they appear. So right now you're going, okay, that's great, Mr. J. You've just showed us you've got these tricks where you can change rows to columns and vice versa. Well, that's the trick of what a pivot table is. But we haven't even begun to see the power of that. So let's say you're the principal of a school site, and for some reason, you need to know all of the students that came from, actually we're going to change that. You need to know, maybe it's a Title IX thing or something, you need to know all of the female students that came from out of state, because now that they're in California, they have to fill out a survey or something for Title IX or something like that. So you want to know who they are. Well, here's our females from out of state. There's 14. Well, that's great, Mr. J. We know there's 14, but who are they? Here's where you get to see the power. So again, we started here with all of this. We went up to data and we created a pivot table. It kicked it out into its own little spreadsheet over here. And by the way, if you ever click out of the way, whoa, where'd all our choices go? All you have to do is click back anywhere and suddenly they all appear again because it's not sure what you're doing. So again, out of state females, 14. Watch what happens when I drill down on the 14. Double click. There's 14 students right there. Remember the headers up at the top. All right, let's get rid of this little banner. There are the 14 female students that entered from out of state. And that's all of their information, all the way to K. Because remember, we got rid of the other two columns that were there. We didn't think that was necessary. And if we want to, we could do our trick, or we could spread things out so it's a little easier to read. And now we can see all of the different columns. But there they are. That's all of the students. And where did this show up? Detail 1, enter from out of state female. We got that off of our pivot table. All right. Well, maybe this Title IX thing, the females coming from out of state, doesn't pertain to the kindergartners or first or second or third graders, just the fourth and fifth graders. Maybe they're the ones that need to get the survey or something like that. So just to give you an idea, once you've clicked on that and you have a table like this, then you can always come up here and you can, let's see if we can find our thing in here. I don't see it, that's okay. So we go back over here and we go to the filter thing, we click on this, and now we can go back to what we did before. And again, we have all of our grades here. So I can deselect third, second, first, and kindergartners, and the blank ones, because by the way, we've got a lot of blank ones going all the way to 700, but we just want to see the fourth and fifth graders. We'll click OK. And now you just collapse this. We see that a few of the 14 are missing because we have the names of only the fourth and fifth graders. So what we just did here by creating this pivot table from all of this data right here, tons of information, 473 students right here, all this information. We made a pivot table that can display any part of it we want to. And again, we talk about adding rows, any one of these can be added. They won't all make sense, but you can add whichever one you want and make this table as complex as you want. But once you have it into a format that you need, then you can save this. And if you need to know, for some reason, you need to know all of the male and female students entering from within San Diego City Schools, I guess that says, you just click on the 18. And a whole new detail, in this case detail 2, pops up, and those 18 students are all right there with that information. So that right there is pivot tables, and we did that kind of quick. And I apologize for going so fast, but you'll be able to go back and take a look at that and realize that just practicing, by the way, never practice on an actual worksheet or workbook that your site or your department's using. Make a copy of it. Real easy. Just go up and make a copy of it and then practice on that one. And I would even call that copy practice or test or something. And that way you can play around with all these different things. So what I'm going to do at this point, I'm going to I'm going to go to here. I want to show you flash fill, and this goes very quickly, but you just need to know what flash fill is because it's a very powerful deal. So we're going to go back into our thing. Here's our, this is our Excel file that we use to demonstrate flash fill. All right, and this may look familiar to you. We were in here before. This is where we did the concatenate and proper functions. Here's where we saw those really very long formulas that we did. But on this particular one, and again, I sent this to you, we have flash fill 1, 2, 3. So click on flash fill 1. It should look familiar to you. And so right here, before we had done a formula which relates to these. But here's what flash fill is. It's machine learning. It's kind of like autofill, but on steroids. And I will tell you that you got to be careful when you're using it, because if you start making mistakes and go back and delete stuff, it's not going to know what you're doing. But if you're careful, we can do this no problem. So we want right here, we want this to be Gable, comma, space, Gable, comma, space, Clark. I was going to say first name, last name. All right, so let's go ahead and start. So I'm going to say G-A-B-L-E, and then I'm going to do the comma, and then I'm going to do a space. We're not doing a formula. You can see right up there, we're just typing this out. And yes, I did make Gable a proper name by capitalizing it, but machine learning is pretty sharp. So down there we see Turner, McCall, who else? Townsend. We'll see if machine learning can pick up on that. And then Clark, C-L-A-R-K. Now, I'm pausing for a moment. I haven't hit enter yet because we still see the cursors blinking up here. I want to make sure that I've copied the data exactly. Yes, I did make it uppercase and I added a comma and a space. That's okay. Machine learning can figure that out. But if I spell Gable wrong or Clark wrong, and I hit enter and then I realize my mistake and go back and try and change it, it's not going to know what we're doing. But since I have it spelled correctly, I'm going to hit enter. And so watch what happens as I start to spell out Gardner. So the first thing I do is a capital G. Oh, it thinks we're doing Gable. Well, that's true. Both the G and the A are the same, but as soon as we get to the R in Gardner, the third letter, which is different, and I tap an R instantly, it says, oh, is that what you're doing? Absolutely. And so I just hit enter, and it sets it. And I'll go up here, and I'll drag this over so Stevie Ray Vaughan has some room. I want you to notice something. Clark Gable, Lauren McCall. There are no formulas in any of these. Machine learning just did that. It's called flash fill. All right. And more importantly, all of the last names that were not capitalized with proper Townsend, Turner, Bogart, they've all been fixed. But wait, Mr. J, what about Carrie? Poor Carrie is looking, Lana and Lauren. What about them? Well, we didn't do anything to the first names to demonstrate a change. So it doesn't know that that's what we want to do. But we can go down here and we can click on Cary Grant. I can go in here and I can backspace and I can do a uppercase C. And then if I hit enter, we'll see what happens to Lana, to Lauren. I guess those are the only ones left. Instantly, it's figured it out. And that's what we wanted to do. And so here we've done the proper function and the concatenate function in two different formulas, except for we didn't use any formulas. We didn't use any functions either. We used machine learning. It's called flash fill. Very powerful. Let's go to the next one. Remember those really long formulas that did all this? No problem. Let's just do Gable is the last name, and I hit enter, and of course we're going to do Gardner, and there it is. It still thinks we're trying to do that because it doesn't know yet, but as soon as I hit that R, oh, is that what you're trying to do? Absolutely. Hit enter, done. Every one of these done exactly right, and none of them have a formula behind it. So that's pretty cool. Wait, can it be that easy? Let's try this. So let's try Clark. There's Clark, and then I hit enter because it's spelled right. Again, if I spelled Clark incorrectly and I hit enter and I go back, you're going to lose it, and it's not going to know what you're doing. So just a tip, always pay close attention to what you're doing. So the next one, unlike Gable and Gardner that share the first two letters, Ava is a capital A. So let's just hit the capital A. And as soon as I do it, it says, hey, is that what you want? Absolutely. Hit enter, and now it's all there. So we just did that without any formulas at all. You cannot do that in Sheets as of yet. Maybe one day you can, but right now that's not available. Hold on while I turn off my air conditioner that is working very well. All right, so then Flash Fill 3. Wait, there's more. We're going to kick it up a notch. In our advanced Microsoft Word class, we teach mail merge, and we have data with data sheet in Excel that has all of the addresses and the names of the students in our 473 fictitious students in our fictitious school, and also fictitious contact people or whatever. And we have it in different columns like that, and that's how you do mail merge. So let's take a look at this. We have first part of the street address there, then in another column the city, another column the state, another column the zip, and then this contact person. What if right here I want to combine all 4 columns of the address right here? Can machine learning pick up on that? Let's find out. Let's spread it out so we don't have to be staring at all those bars. So here I am. I got to type it out exactly right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I hit a space and then make sure I capitalize it first. And if I make a mistake, it's okay as long as I don't hit enter. So I'm going to type it all out and then take a look at it. All right. So I'm looking up here and I'm looking over here and it looks like exactly right. So now what usually we do when we're writing out an address, we put a comma there. And of course, we're going to put a space. And then let's go ahead and type in San Diego. And again, I'm going to be careful to make sure I spell it exactly like it is so we don't throw it off the machine learning. So then I'm going to do a space there, and then of course the next column is California, capital CA, and then there's a space, there's 92001. So I go 92001, and before I hit enter, I'm just going to make sure. So I have the contents of column C, D, E, and F are exactly right. And we're not doing anything with this contact person. We just skipped over all that. But we did add a comma and a space. So now I'm going to hit enter. And as you can see, the next number on our list of 473 different students and with their addresses is 8. And that's different than the 1. So as soon as I tap an 8, machine learning is that fast. Are you kidding me? And so then I simply hit enter and it sets it. There you go. Now another trick that you can learn is that everybody knows that you have a left click, you have a right click, on your mouse. Did you know you had a third click? So if you are somewhere over here in the middle and you hold your mouse steady and your mouse wheel that goes up and down, that's not what we're trying to do yet. Keep your mouse wheel steady and then click down on it. It's actually a button. And when you do it, if you're careful, you can not roll your mouse wheel, so you get this little symbol. And wherever you move your mouse away from that symbol, it goes that direction if it can. So what I'm going to do here is I've just kind of moved it away. My hands are no longer touching my mouse. I just wanted you to see that all those different students and all of the different addresses, all the way down to 473, were done instantly, combining 4 different columns without any formulas whatsoever into another column. So that could be very helpful for you. You can experiment on the different ways that the machine learning works, but I promise you, you're going to love Flash Fill. And so why not? If your site, your department's using Google Sheets and it can't do this, at least yet it can't do it, then do it in Excel. And then you can just copy all of column H if that's what you're doing, and then you can import it into Google Sheets and then put it on there. Or you can even make a copy of this Excel spreadsheet that you just did the Flash Fill on and then turn it into a spreadsheet in, oh, we made it all the way down, so now we can go back. I'm not clicking anything, I'm just moving my mouse. And again, the further you move it away, the faster it goes. Look how fast it went up to the top. And then, of course, to get out of it, you just click and away it goes. So
I have a quick question about autofill.
This is Flash Fill, yes.
Oh, yes. So if we copy and paste a big amount of information from, let's say we already have it in Google Sheets, and we copy and paste into Excel, will this still work if we want to separate or
that is a very good question. And what I will tell you is most likely it's going to work unless you're copying and pasting a bunch of different stuff and you're creating this big worksheet. I don't know. I will tell you that flash fill can get lost, and it can get lost pretty quickly. And so, for example, on this one here, I have tried this. We did it in H1, and we had this contact person in the middle, but it still figured out what the heck we were doing because of what over there. I have been successful in I. I think I made it happen in J, but after that, it had no idea what I was doing because I was too far removed. So you can kind of outthink it or trick it so it doesn't know what you're doing. Again, if you misspell something or put in the wrong address and then you go back and change it, it doesn't know what you're doing. But if you had this entire thing here, for example, minus this, and you had all of this in Google Sheets and you copied and pasted this onto a sheet in Excel, and then you started over here in H1 to do that, it should work, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So, but it's just something you have to practice to see how it works. But here's the good news. We're just getting started with processing power getting better and AI coming along, machine learning, all that. Pretty soon, these spreadsheets are going to be doing themselves, and we're just going to be telling it what to do, and it's just going to do it all. But anyway, so there you go. We're going to open up in just a couple seconds for questions and answers. But before we do that, I just want to say to all of you, this is a very long class, and I apologize for that, but we had a lot of information that we threw at you. And again, we're going to send you a link shortly, next day or two, to this video, so you can go back and you could review some of the things that we've done. Just want to say thank you so much for coming to learn with us. Please let your colleagues know about what we're doing here. I'm going to hit this little minus sign so I can get back to this page, and share your calendar that you have. And again, in the next week or so, we're going to be filling out January, March, and January, February, March. Can't forget February. That's where my birthday is. But anyway, please share these classes with your coworkers and all that. I just want to say thank you so much for coming to learn with us today. I'm going to go ahead and end this video, and in about 30-45 seconds, we're going to open up for questions and answers. So thank you so much for coming to be with us today.